Title: The Wealthy Farmer Disowns His Mother After Losing His Job, Not Knowing Her Hidden Wealth. Chapter 1: The Mysterious Beginning. From the very first moment, an eerie silence hung over the old farmhouse, broken only by the faint rustle of leaves, stirred by an unseen breeze. Strange shadows flickered across the cracked walls, as if the house itself held secrets desperate to be uncovered. Every creak of the floorboards echoed like a whispered warning, while outside, the distant howl of a lone wolf sent chills down the spine. Something was undeniably wrong, a hidden truth lurking just beneath the surface, waiting to unravel. The air grew thick with anticipation as unexplained lights danced in the darkness, and the townsfolk's hushed rumors spoke of an ancient curse that no one dared to challenge. Each strange occurrence piled upon the last, weaving a tangled web of mystery that pulled the reader deeper into the story, craving to know what sinister forces were at play. Jack, a once wealthy farmer, had watched his dreams crumble with the economy's decline. Just weeks prior, he had stood proudly in his fields, golden crops swaying under the sun, his mother Margaret smiling in the shade of their family home. But now, as the weight of failure pressed down, resentment clouded his judgment. In a moment of rage, he had screamed at her to leave, feeling burdened by the very woman who had raised him. To his neighbors, this act was a scandal, outcasting him in the close-knit village of Maplewood. But Margaret harbored a truth Jack knew nothing about. For years, she had kept her wealth hidden, a fortune earned from her own ventures, a secret meant to spare him the burdens that often accompanied prosperity. As Jack sought to nurse his wounded pride, her past was woven intricately into the very fabric of Maplewood. Few knew how she had thrived when the world around them crumbled. Whispers of her days as an entrepreneur, a force in the market, floated through the village, yet they were but echoes of a life entwined with shadows. The tension thickened as Jack grappled with his heartbreak and shame. Each tightness in his chest signaled his internal fight. The love he once felt for his mother battled against the bitterness that now defined him. He found himself wandering their once happy halls, the memories of laughter ringing hollow. Just as he prepared to sever ties forever, a stranger appeared in town, a shadowy figure whose very presence stirred the undercurrents of that idyllic village. Rumors swirled. The stranger whispered tales of Margaret's past. He held secrets in his eyes, the kind that could unravel every thread of Jack's carefully crafted world. Was it revenge? Redemption? The villagers speculated, glancing between the newcomer and the estranged farmer, each pair of eyes filled with anticipation and judgment. Jack felt the ground beneath him shift. Would he confront his mother, demanding answers he feared to hear? Or would the revelation of her hidden wealth widen the chasm between them? As whispers beckoned him towards a truth he had long ignored, he stood at a crossroads, heart pounding. He had to decide. Was it time to forgive, or let resentment seal their fates forever? Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important alert. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without warning. Just take a quick look at the red button down below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming your way, And since you're here, drop that powerful like that helps me so much with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love meeting every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Jack stood frozen, his heart a chaotic drumbeat in his chest. The whispers around him prickled his skin. 1,000 eyes filled with judgment, digging into his soul. He turned to the stranger, a man with a face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat, an air of mystery swirling around him like fog. "What do you know about my mother?" Jack's voice cracked. The words held both anger and desperation, a cocktail of emotions he struggled to contain. The stranger didn't flinch. "Much more than you can imagine," he replied. Cryptically, his voice low and conspiratorial. "Margaret isn't who you think she is." The words hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. Jack's heart raced, dread pooling in the pit of his stomach. Was she hiding more than wealth? Did she harbor even darker secrets? The murmur of the townsfolk grew louder, their speculative glances bouncing between Jack and the stranger. He felt the walls of his world closing in around him. "Enough games, just tell me!" Jack's fists clenched, his vision blurring with a mix of anger and confusion. The stranger leaned closer, hesitant. "It's not just about money. It's about your past, Jack." A chill swept through him, and he wondered if he had heard right. His past? Was this man implying his childhood, his memories? Familiar warmth turned cold as he grappled with a slew of childhood moments, tainted by his mother's shadows. Suddenly, images of late-night conversations, hushed tones, and his mother weeping softly under the moonlight flooded his mind. He had dismissed them, chalked them up to stress and hardship. But what if there was something more sinister hidden beneath? What if Margaret was involved in something dark? And then the unexpected happened. Just as Jack was about to demand more, a loud crash shattered the tension. A door swung open violently from the back of the crowd, and a figure stumbled in. It was Margaret, her face pale, eyes wild and haunted. "Jack, you have to listen," she gasped, her breath ragged, each word laced with urgency. The crowd went silent. Jack's heart raced faster, a sense of foreboding tightening its grip. "You're in danger. They know." "Who knows?" he shouted, confusion spiraling. "What's going on?" "Those you trust. They're not who you think." She stepped closer, desperation etched on her face. "I hid the truth, for your sake. But it's coming back to haunt us." With every word, Jack felt reality shift beneath him. The world he thought he understood cracked open, splintering into pieces. The onlookers held their breath, their whispers suspended like an electrified current. "Mom, what did you do?" The lump in Jack's throat expanded, panic seeping into his bones. "Secrets, Jack. Secrets that bind us. Secrets that could destroy everything," she murmured, fear flooding her gaze. The stranger's eyes flicked between mother and son, a twisted smile creeping onto his lips. Jack's mind raced. His mother, the woman he had just disowned, was now the key to a dark reality he had never wanted to face. Tension crackled in the air, like the moment before a storm breaks. "What do you mean, everything?" he demanded, his voice trembling. Margaret opened her mouth to respond, but a loud crash startled them all. The sound of shattering glass pierced the tension, and Jack turned just in time to see shadows racing towards them from the tree line bordering the farmhouse. Fear roared to life in his chest as the reality of their situation sank in. His past was hunting him down, dragging dark secrets to light. The air thickened with dread. Jack stood at the brink of a revelation that might change everything he had ever believed. What was it that his mother had hidden? What dark truth loomed just beyond the edge of their fragile world? The shadows whispered promises of chaos, and Jack felt his grip on reality slip. He had to know. But at what cost? Jack's heart raced as shadows spilled from the tree line, figures dancing in the moonlight like wraiths from a nightmare. Margaret's urgent words echoed in his mind, unraveling threads of certainty he once felt about their lives. "Mom, what did you do?" But before she could respond, the figures lunged forward. There, faces masked in darkness. Fear gripped the crowd, a tight knot in the chest of every onlooker. Jack felt the air grow colder, thick with dread. He clenched his fists, grounding himself against the chaos. "Get back!" he shouted, stepping forward protectively. His voice shook, but he would face whatever horror awaited. Yet, as the figures closed in, the truth he'd always known began to fray. Who were these people? Just then, the lead figure surged into the light, and Jack felt his breath catch in his throat. It was someone he recognized, someone he hadn't seen in years. "Liam?" he whispered, disbelief twisting through him. Liam, his childhood best friend, had vanished after the fateful night they buried the past deep. In the woods, a night Jack had long tried to forget. Terror and shock painted Liam's face, a look that screamed of panic, desperation. "They know, Jack," Liam gasped, voice hoarse. "You need to listen to your mother. All of it is true." Margaret's expression crumbled, as if she could no longer bear the lies that threatened to consume them. "It's worse than you think," she cried, stepping closer to the swarm of figures, hands outstretched in a desperate plea. Just as Jack stepped further towards his friend, intent on reaching out, a figure brandishing a sharp object emerged from the shadows, its glint catching the moonlight. Jack's heart dropped. "Get down!" he shouted, instinct taking over. But not fast enough. The figure lunged, and a scream ripped through the night. It wasn't a scream of fear, but of pain, a voice he knew all too well. Jack turned to see Liam collapsing, clutching his side where crimson blossomed through his shirt. "Liam!" Jack cried out, racing toward him. Panic surged through Jack's limbs. He felt like the ground was crumbling beneath him. The crowd erupted into chaos. People shouted, ran, screams piercing through the night like arrows. Margaret fell to her knees beside her son, sorrow etched into every line of her face. "No, not like this!" Tears streamed down her cheeks. "They can't take you from me!" Jack's heart cracked, splintering under the weight of betrayal. "What have you done?" he shouted at his mother, rage bubbling to the surface. You let this happen? It was supposed to protect you, to protect us all, she wailed, her frail voice barely rising above the noise around them. Protect? Or keep secrets? Jack's mind reeled, memories flooding back in flashes of fear and darkness. Their past, buried deep, collided with the present, shattering his reality. Before he could process the gravity of what had just transpired, the remaining figures retreated into the depths of the trees, shadows mingling and disappearing. The last one turned, revealing a face twisted with vengeance. "You'll all regret this," she screeched, before vanishing into the night. Jack's gaze flickered from the retreating figures back to Liam, who lay gasping for breath, eyes wide with confusion and pain. What is happening?" Liam managed, blood pooling around him. "We have to get you help." Jack knelt, desperation twisting in his chest. But deep down, he felt a worst kind of revelation rising like bile. "Jack," Liam gasped, "it's not just about the money. It's about the choice your mother made." Jack's heart pounded in his ears, confusion gnawing at him like a ravenous beast. "What choice?" "No! No!" Jack shook his head, trying to fight the reality crashing in on him. Around him spiral into chaos. Everything he thought he understood about family, love, loyalty, all shattered. In that moment, standing on the edge of a dark abyss, Jack knew he was no longer only facing the danger of the night. He was stumbling into the depths of a twisted legacy that could destroy them all. What other horrors lay hidden beneath the surface? And was it too late to uncover the truths that could save them? Jack's heart raced, and all he could hear was the ragged breaths of Liam, echoing like a clock counting down to something catastrophic. The shadows swirling in the woods loomed larger now, hungry figures darting beyond the light. Jack felt a chill ripple down his spine, and the ground seemed to pulse beneath him as he knelt beside his friend. "Stay with me, Liam!" Jack shouted, but doubt clawed at him with every breath Liam struggled to take. Margaret's tears mixed with the earth, her hands trembling as they covered Liam's wound. The crimson stain grew, stark against the darkening night. "Jack!" Liam gasped, voice like broken glass. "The truth is—" But before he could finish, a violent tremor shook the ground, and Jack's instinct kicked in. He turned. "What now?" Panic seeped into his voice as shadows stirred once more from the tree line. But this time, they were not running away. Something ancient and terrible rumbled. A light flickered off the distant hills, turning the night into a hellish display of silhouettes. Jack felt sweat trickling down his back. An unmistakable roar rumbled in the night. Was it a creature, or something even worse? "Run!" Jack screamed, his voice cracking, and people began to scatter into the shadows, but not all knew where to go. The air thickened with fear. His mother's eyes were wide, glimmering with terror. "Jack!" she screamed, her voice high and urgent. Before Jack could react, the earth split open at his feet, a dark chasm yawning wide. It felt as if the world itself was about to swallow him whole. The screams of the villagers mingled with the roar of the chasm, a cacophony of terror that heightened the chaos. Liam groaned again, struggling to push himself up. "Jack!" His friend's voice was a mere whisper now. "The truth! You have to!" But the ground cracked further, and Jack lost his footing, teetering dangerously on the edge. Heart pounding, he gripped the side of the hole desperately, eyes wide. And then something seeped from the crevice. Thick, dark smoke that writhed like angry serpents in the air. "Jack, you need to listen!" Margaret shouted, panic twisting her face. "The truth is—" Suddenly, the smoke turned bright, swirling up like a whirlpool. And then it exploded in a flash of blinding light. Jack shielded his eyes, but still, he felt the heat wrap around him, singeing his skin. In that instant, as the world lit up, something shifted. Jack felt a surge of energy all around him, tearing at the shreds of reality. It was as if the very essence of the air had changed. And then it hit him. Something clicked in his mind. A memory, a voice. The words flooded him, deep and haunting. "You will remember. You will understand." The light subsided, leaving a stillness hanging in the air. Jack opened his eyes, bewildered. But what met him wasn't the familiar sight of his world. It was an image from years gone by, a moment he thought he had buried. Flashes of his childhood unfolded, pears being harvested, sunny afternoons of laughter. But also whispers, a curse hanging in the air that had always felt incomplete, always just a heartbeat away from breaking. "Oh, Margaret, what have you done?" The words slipped from his lips, now handcuffed to his reality. An insidious understanding gripped him, and dread pooled in his stomach. His mother's expression flickered, her eyes dark and unreadable. "You don't understand. You don't know the whole story." A crackle of realization sparked. Everyone was staring. They were not just onlookers now. They were witnesses. And that gaze turned expectant, hungering for a revelation that could shake the foundations of Maplewood to its core. Jack's mind whirled, and he tightened his grip on reality. What had the light revealed? What deep, unspeakable truth about his mother, his life, about himself, was peeking through the cracks? The silence pressed on him, and reality folded in on itself. "Tell me!" The plea escaped him, raw and desperate. What lay beneath the surface of their past? And who was truly in danger now? As the shadows danced again at the edges, Jack's heart raced. The world around him felt like it was spiraling down a black hole, and he teetered at the brink between the truth and the abyss. This was far from over. The secrets threatened to unravel. Jack's throat constricted as he awaited Margaret's answer, every heartbeat echoing in the tension hanging thick in the air. The shadows had receded momentarily, but their presence loomed still, heavy and palpable, gnawing at his sanity. "Mom, please, you need to tell me the truth." His eyes searched her face for some glimmer of honesty. Tears choked her voice as she murmured, "You have to understand, Jack. I did it to protect you. I never wanted you to suffer for my choices." The anguish in her words twisted like a knife in his gut. But before he could respond, darkness crept back, coiling around them. With a sudden surge, the ground trembled again, and a crack split the earth wider. Jack stumbled back, nearly losing his balance. The fear that washed over him was like ice in his veins, and he could feel every individual heartbeat thrumming. Then, out of the chasm, a deep growl echoed, reverberating through the air. The villagers froze, their eyes wide, breath caught in their throats. Just as Jack turned back to his mother, a blinding flash exploded from the depths of the fissure, illuminating the dark like a bolt of lightning. "Jack!" Margaret's voice pierced through the chaos, full of panic. "Get away!" But it was too late. The light swirled, and from it a figure emerged. A tall silhouette against the brightness. It was obscured, ghostly at first, but as the light dimmed, the figure became clearer. Jack's blood ran cold. "No, it can't be," he whispered, disbelief flooding his senses. Standing before them, framed by a haze of ethereal light, was a woman he recognized all too well. A woman he thought lost to time. "Lillian," he gasped, sweat dripping down his brow. It was his long-lost sister, a figure he had mourned for years, thought to have vanished without a trace. Her eyes shone with an otherworldly intensity, and an unstoppable force radiated from her very being. "Jack, it's time you knew the truth." Lillian's voice boomed, echoing off the trees, sending a ripple through the crowd. "Everything that's happened, everything you thought you understood, it's woven into our blood." Jack felt the world snap. It was as if all the air left his lungs. He blinked, trying to process what he was hearing. Lillian had been the center of his childhood, the joy they shared, then the darkness that followed. The day she disappeared had shattered him. Margaret's reaction was visceral. A scream ripped from her throat, raw and guttural. "No! You shouldn't be here! You don't belong in this world!" Her hands trembled, reaching out, as if to shield Jack from the truth. But Lillian stepped forward, her presence glowing like a beacon. "They took me from you, Mom. They were afraid of what we could become." The crowd muttered in confusion, fear flaring in their eyes. Jack's heart raced, torn between relief and terror. This wasn't just a reunion. It was a reckoning. "You were taken?" Jack's voice was barely a whisper, choking on the gravity of his sister's words. "Taken by whom?" "By those who knew our family's secrets," Lillian continued, her expression fierce. "The hidden wealth, the power. Mom hid it from you to keep you safe. But the truth is, it's far more dangerous than you know." Margaret fell to her knees, anguish twisting her face. "I protected you both. I did what I had to." But Lillian pressed on, voice rising like thunder. "No more lies. They are coming for you, Jack. They want what is ours and will stop at nothing to get it." Reality slammed into Jack like a wave, drowning him. Everything he believed was a lie. His family, his past, all of it wrapped in deceit. He declared, glancing at the shadows, retreating uncertainly at the edge of the clearing. "They're coming, Jack. You're not safe. None of us are." And then, like a shimmering mirage, she began to fade. "You must choose, Jack. Embrace your destiny, or let it all slip away." Jack's heart thundered. The air thickened with dread. The truth of his life twisted around him, squeezing tighter with every breath. He turned to his mother, her pale face a portrait of anguish. "What is our destiny?" But the ground trembled again, cracking under the weight of everything that had just been revealed. The choice loomed like a dark shadow, and Jack felt the abyss waiting, ready to swallow him whole, as everything began to unravel around him. One thought screamed in his mind. Was this an ending or just a beginning? Jack blinked, still reeling from the sight of Lillian. The moment felt surreal, like a twisted dream. But there she was, bright and vibrant despite the chaos swirling around them. Then the earth shook again, a violent tremor that reverberated through Jack's bones. He lost his balance, falling hard to the ground as the crack ripped wider, this time with a low, ominous growl escaping from the abyss. "Get back!" Margaret screeched, her wide eyes darting to the chasm. Jack scrambled to his feet, a rush of adrenaline igniting every nerve ending in his body. The villagers were frantically retreating, their faces marked with fear and confusion. But Jack couldn't pull his gaze from Lillian. His heart raced. He was filled with awe and dread. "Lillian, please, you need to explain," he shouted through the noise. But she was consumed by the shadows beginning to emerge again. The figures twisted and turned, indistinct but undeniably threatening. A flash of brilliant light burst forth from the cavern, illuminating the night like a nuclear explosion. Jack shielded his eyes from the glare, but a voice, powerful and piercing, echoed from within. The truth must come to light. Then, as the light dimmed, everything shifted in an instant. A heavy mist flowed from the crevice, and from amid the swirling shadows, a form emerged, tall and imposing. It was cloaked, its face hidden from view. Jack's breath caught in his throat as the figure drew closer, the air vibrating with its presence. "You dare to call upon the blood of the past?" The voice sent chills down Jack's spine. It was no stranger, but a figure haunted with memories he thought buried. "Ruth!" Margaret gasped, collapsing to the ground. Jack felt his heart drop. Ruth, the woman who had been a phantom in their lives ever since Lillian's disappearance. His mother's sister. Presumed dead for years. How can this be? Jack's eyes widened, swimming with disbelief. Heartache and anger boiled in his chest. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Silence!" Ruth boomed, her voice reverberating through the night. "The darkness hungers, and you have awakened it. Your ignorance comes at a price." Shadows tangled around her, swirling ominously, almost as if they had a life of their own. Margaret pulled herself up, desperation clawing at her features. "I thought you were gone. I thought I was protecting us from the past." Her words were a desperate plea as her hand trembled, reaching out toward Ruth. But Ruth stepped forward, each footfall echoing like war drums. "Protect? You hid the truth, Margaret. You thought your choices were yours alone. But blood binds us in ways you cannot comprehend." A sharp intake of breath passed through Jack, his mind racing. Everything he'd known was flipped upside down. The wealth, the secrets, the hidden truths, all truly part of some larger game? "What do you know about our family?" Jack demanded, stepping closer to Ruth, his courage faltering only slightly as fear trickled down his spine. "Everything, Jack," Ruth spat, her eyes igniting with passion. "You were never just a farm boy. You are part of a legacy that stretches beyond this place, tied to power and darkness, and now it calls for your name." Jack's chest tightened, the air thickening with confusion and disbelief. "What do you mean?" Suddenly, Ruth's form flickered, and in a flash, something unexpected happened. She opened her arms wide. "You must choose or face the consequences. Embrace who you were meant to be." Before he could grasp what was happening, the shadows surged forward, swallowing Ruth whole, pulling her back into the depths of the chasm. A piercing scream echoed in the air, desperation rippling through the crowd. Jack's heart soared, plummeted, and soared again. Dread wrapped around him, tightening like a noose. The truth was slipping away, the very fabric of reality fraying before his eyes. "What have you unleashed?" he shouted toward the void, the shadows roiling angrily in response. "Ruth, what does all this mean?" But silence blanketed the night once more, ominous and heavy. The villagers' eyes were wide with horror. Their breaths mingled with disbelief, uncertainty dripping like poison. Jack was left standing at a precipice, teetering on the edge of revelation and ruin. What truth lay beneath the surface of their identities, and what darkness would they need to confront? And most importantly, who were they really? Jack stood on the edge of the abyss, his heart racing. The weight of Lillian's revelation hung like a storm cloud above him. He fought against the fear gripping his chest, but it felt as if the ground beneath him could shake free, swallowing him whole. The villagers, faces pale with shock, stood frozen, unable to comprehend what they had just witnessed. "What do we do now?" someone whispered in the crowd, but Jack had no answer. He turned to his mother, desperation tight in his throat. "Ma, what was Ruth talking about? What truth?" Margaret's eyes darted to the chasm, filled with a frantic wildness. "We need to get away! This isn't over!" she cried, scrambling to her feet. But before Jack could respond, the ground trembled violently again, a deep, rumbling roar echoing beneath them. Dust flew like confetti as the earth shook harder, and Jack struggled to maintain his footing. That's when the unexpected happened. The shadows at the edge of the clearing pulsed and whirled. For a brief moment, they hesitated, then surged forward. Jack's eyes widened in horror. Dark figures began to emerge. It wasn't just Ruth anymore. It was a swarm. Figures cloaked in shadows, eyes glowing with a malevolent light. "No! Not like this!" Jack shouted, instinctively reaching for his mother. But the figures surrounded them too fast. The air turned thick and heavy, suffocating. He gasped, panic rising like bile in his throat. And then, in the midst of the chaos, an explosion of light erupted from the chasm. More intense than before, it poured across the clearing, painting everything in blinding white. Jack squeezed his eyes shut, shielding his face from the searing brightness. A shrill scream pierced through the cacophony. "Mom!" His heart sank as he felt someone grasp his arm, panic-stricken. Was it her? When the light finally faded, Jack opened his eyes, and what he saw left him stabbed with disbelief. Standing before him, glowing with an ethereal light, was not Ruth, nor was it Lillian. It was a figure he hadn't seen for years, but had. Never forgotten, his father, Ethan, alive, whole. "Dad!" Jack's voice cracked with shock, disbelief flooding over him. Ethan was supposed to be gone, lost to a darkness Jack had barely understood. His father's face was calm, resolute, but shadows flickered at the edges, as if he battled an unseen force. "You have to trust me, Jack." Ethan's voice was clear, but heavy, as if drenched in weighty memories. "Your mother, she knows more than she's let on. The truth is worse than you think." Margaret's face twisted in surprise, agony creasing her brow. "Ethan, How? How are you here? No time, Ethan shot back. I was never truly gone. The bond we share, our lineage, binds me. You must embrace it, but it comes at a cost. In the blink of an eye, the shadows seemed to recoil, hesitating as if sensing their presence. But Jack's heart raced. What cost? What do you mean? His father stepped closer, the air crackling with tension. You must choose between the light and the shadow. Before Jack could comprehend it, the shadows lunged forward, a whirlpool of darkness engulfing his father. Jack reached out, but the consuming darkness was too swift. No, Dad! He felt the ground shift beneath him, the world spiraling into chaos. It's your turn now, Jack! Ethan's voice echoed from the dark, merging with the shadows, and in that moment, Jack understood. The truth had always been here, hidden away in the depths of who they were. But the question now loomed larger than ever. What if the light was worse than the darkness? Jack stood at the edge, heart pounding, breath shallow. The shadows clawed back, more determined, more sinister. Ethan's voice still echoed, thick with urgency. But the reality of his father's disappearance tightened like a vice around Jack's chest. Dad, come back! Jack shouted into the darkness, desperation pouring from his voice. The chilling silence that followed sent a shudder through him. The villagers whispered nervously, eyes darting from the gaping chasm to Jack and Margaret. Fear hung in the air like smoke. Margaret clutched Jack's arm, her grip like iron. "We need to get out, Jack," she urged. But he wouldn't leave. Not now. Not when the truth was so close. "There has to be another way," he cried back, glancing toward the swirling shadows. They pulsed with energy, a hungry force waiting for the right moment to strike. Then something shifted. An unsettling calm swept over the crowd, replaced by murmurs that curled around Jack's heart like ivy. The darkness hesitated, hovering, as if sensing the tension. And in that stillness, a voice sliced through, smooth and slick. "Why, Jack? Why would you call him back?" A figure stepped from the shadows, illuminated by the pale moonlight. Jack's breath caught. It was the stranger, the man whose eyes had burned with secrets. Jack's stomach twisted. "You!" Jack shouted, fury erupting in his chest. "What do you want?" The stranger smiled, a disconcerting grin that seemed to stretch too wide. "You've invited chaos into your life, Jack, and now it's time to play your part." "What are you talking about?" Jack pressed, but unease gnawed at him. The world felt fragile, like glass teetering on the edge of a surface. "The darkness is not simply an enemy," the stranger continued, circling like a predator. "It's your heritage, yours and your mother's. You just haven't awakened to your true self yet." A murmur spread through the villagers. Shock morphed into whispers of fear, and Jack's mind stumbled over his thoughts. Could it be? "No, that's not true!" Jack's voice rose, echoing back to him like a ghost. "You're lying. My family, we're just farmers." "Just farmers, huh?" The stranger's laughter danced on the wind, bitter and cruel. "You think your mother raised you in ignorance? You were her greatest secret. Not just wealth, power. The true roots of your family are entwined in shadows and light." You carry an ancient legacy, Jack. It's why they've come for you. Who? Who's come for me? Jack demanded. But his heart clenched at the implications in the stranger's words. The forces that took your sister. The force that binds your family. It all leads back to your mother. He leaned closer. Margaret isn't... Jack swung towards Margaret, searching her face for answers. She faltered, a flicker of fear crossing her expression. Mom, what did you do? His voice was barely a whisper, but the impact was like a punch. Margaret trembled, tears pooling in her eyes. I had to, Jack. I did it for you, to keep you safe. Safe or trapped? The stranger taunted, stepping back to allow the shadows to curl around him like a cloak. You'll have to decide. Embrace your legacy or face the darkness. You don't have much time. And then, amidst the chaos, a blinding light erupted from the chasm. It was dazzling, radiant, illuminating the town, and making Jack squint. At that moment, he felt a pressure building in his chest, an awakening that started small but grew. The truth surrounded him, and he gasped, realizing it wasn't just about his father or Lillian, but about a legacy he had never known. What's happening to me? Jack cried out, feeling the energy surge as shadows retreated yet again. But the stranger smiled. The night is young, Jack. Your real test is just beginning. What do you choose? As the light enveloped him, Jack's mind raced. Was he meant to embrace this power? Would it save him or destroy everything he loved? Could he even trust his mother? The chasm of uncertainty beckoned him, and Jack realized the darkness may hold more than just danger. It might reveal who they truly are. Jack felt the warmth of the light wrap around him, an invisible blanket of hope and confusion. Its energy surged within him, a pulse that quickened his heart and blurred the lines between fear and excitement. But as he stood there, caught between the shadows and the light, a sudden jolt froze him in place. The atmosphere shifted. Something was happening, something beyond his understanding. The dark figures hesitated, their movements stilled, as if they awaited a command. The villagers flinched, eyes wide and brows furrowed. Jack could feel their collective breath, held tight like the moment before a storm. His mind raced. The truth was almost unbearable. What did it mean to embrace this power? What cost would he have to pay? Then, without warning, a loud crack echoed through the clearing. A split second later, the ground beneath Jack erupted, a violent tremor sending shockwaves through the earth. Dust rose in a choking cloud that stung his eyes. He stumbled back, but as he regained his balance, a roar burst forth from the chasm, primal and deafening. "Jack!" Margaret screamed, pulling at his sleeve, frantically trying to get his attention. Her voice cut through the chaos, filled with terror. "Look out!" But Jack barely heard. The noise swallowed everything, and then he saw it, a figure rising from the depths, towering and menacing. It was cloaked in dark mist, a true embodiment of nightmares. "You dare defy me?" The figure howled, its voice shaking the very fabric of the air. Jack felt an icy chill crawl up his spine. It was a voice he recognized, but had buried deep, his own. His breath caught in his throat. What? No, this can't be. Yes, Jack. You, the last of the bloodline. You and your power. It's time to awaken. The voice twisted in a way that rattled him to the core. It felt like staring into a mirror, but this reflection was twisted, dark, a version of himself he never wanted to confront. "This isn't real!" Jack shouted, panic clawing at him. The villagers gasped, some tried to back away, faces pale. The ground shook even harder, and he could see fear in his mother's eyes, her hands trembling at her sides. "No, it is!" The dark figure laughed, cold and hollow. "You are your greatest enemy. You think the darkness is outside you? It is within." The clarity of the moment hit him like a tidal wave. Jack's heart thudded painfully against his ribs. Was this true? Was he the monster they always feared? The shadows around him seemed to cackle, taunting him. "Control it, Jack!" Margaret cried out, her voice breaking, desperate for her son to see, to choose. "You can fight it!" But doubt crept in, thick and suffocating. "How? How do I fight myself?" he shouted, the words wrapping around his throat like a noose. Then, as if to answer him, the dark figure stepped forward, its form growing clearer. It was not just Jack. It was what Jack could become if he didn't seize the moment. An overwhelming dread flooded his senses. A picture of chaos and destruction painted vividly in his mind. Suddenly, in a flash of horrific realization, Jack understood what had been kept from him. The very core of his being was intertwined with a darkness that was not just an enemy, but a twisted aspect of his own nature. It was not an external force he needed to fight. It was his own shadow. "This is what you truly are," the figure taunted, stepping ever closer, intertwining their forms. "Join me, Jack. Embrace your true power." His heart raced, and without warning, something snapped. Within him, as if instinct took over, he shouted, "No! I refuse!" But the shadows didn't retreat. Instead, they surged forward, swirling around Jack, engulfing him in an embrace so cold it felt like death itself. "Jack!" Margaret's voice echoed in the distance. But the darkness thickened, smothering every light, every warmth. The world blurred and twisted, tearing apart the fabric of his existence. And then, in that moment of despair, everything went still. The shadows pulled back, revealing a hidden truth unlike anything Jack could have imagined. "You are not alone," the dark visage whispered, and Jack's heart dropped. There, in the shadows, another familiar face emerged, one that sent a chill down his spine. "Lillian?" he gasped, disbelief washing over. But she wasn't just there. She was one with the darkness, her eyes blazing with an unholy fire. "Join us, brother. You cannot escape what you are, or who you were always meant to become," she stated, her voice dripping with both urgency and allure. Jack stumbled back, the pieces of his world crashing down around him. "No, I won't," he cried out, his heart hammering against a deepening chasm of confusion. What did it all mean? The truth? Was it as simple as a choice between light and dark? Or was it much more complex than he ever imagined? The darkness, swollen with uncertainty, ignited something within him, igniting dread. Would he become what he feared most, or reject it altogether? The shadows hung in the air, hovering over him, waiting for the next move. There, in that instant of horror, Jack faced the ultimate question. Could he truly escape the darkness within? Jack's heart thundered in his chest, fighting against the shadows that loomed around him. This was it. No more running, no more hiding from the truth. The dark figure before him, twisted and familiar, was not just an enemy. It was a piece of him, a reflection of the fears he had buried deep within. "I will not become you!" Jack shouted, his voice breaking the darkness that threatened to pull him in. The shadows around him flickered, almost as if they were hesitating. The energy shifted, and in that moment of clarity, he felt something ignite within, an ember of hope, a spark of defiance. Margaret's voice reached him through the chaos, urgent and fierce. "Jack, you're stronger than this! You can choose the light!" Her words wrapped around him, a lifeline amid the storm. Jack drew in a deep breath, scorching his lungs with determination. "I choose to be me," he declared, and with those words, he felt the glowing warmth of light his ground, the light intensifying. "This is who I am. I embrace my true self." His voice rang out, clear and unwavering. In response, a brilliant flash erupted from his core, cascading outwards, pushing back against the darkness as he faced his fears head-on. And then the shadows recoiled, shattering like glass, the echoes of their power dissipating into the night sky. The dark figure faltered, and as its form crumbled, Jack glimpsed Lillian within, a flicker of recognition in her eyes. "Jack, she began, but the light engulfed her, and she vanished, leaving only peace behind. The crack that had split the ground sealed itself, and the oppressive air lifted like a fog. Jack staggered back, breathing heavily, looking around at the stunned villagers whose faces reflected a mixture of fear and awe. "You did it!" Margaret exclaimed, rushing to him, her voice trembling. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but there was a lightness in her gaze. "You faced it. You faced yourself." Jack swallowed hard, staring at the space where darkness once loomed. "But at what cost?" he breathed, the weight of everything hanging heavily in his chest. "The past is never truly gone. It lives on in us," Margaret said gently, but his voice strong. "Let's face the dawn together!" Some exchanged glances, others stepped forward, their expressions softening. Slowly but surely, the tension faded. Whatever had been trying to tear them apart was now gone, replaced by a fragile sense of unity. And then, as the first light of dawn began to spill over the horizon, illuminating Maplewood with warmth and hope, Jack knew there would be challenges ahead, but they would face them together, ready to forge a new path. Leaving behind the shackles of their fears and embracing their true selves. "Let's rebuild, together," Jack said, his voice catching. The villagers nodded, a chorus of agreement flooding the air. They were no longer just whispers of the past. They were the promise of the future. As they gathered around, the sun broke free, casting golden rays that touched everything. Jack looked at his mother, then at the villagers. There was so much more to learn, so many more stories to unwrap. Jack felt a new weight settle on his shoulders, a legacy filled not with burdens, but with bonds of love and trust. What now? He pondered, sensing the excitement of new beginnings. What will this life look like? But for now, those questions could wait. They had each other. And just like that, their story was only beginning. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss the upcoming exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. And don't forget to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to know this conclusion. Don't wait another second to share. If you like stories about farmers, about everyday life on the farm, and want to know what really happens in the daily lives of the biggest farmers in the world, the hidden stories of the richest owners and the secrets of the farm girls that the media doesn't reveal, check out our virtual book with the most famous and secret stories from the farm. Click on the first link in the video description and get yours now.